So what are you doing this Easter to celebrate with your family? Our good friends at Angel Studios have an incredible movie coming out this Easter called The King of Kings, an animated story of the life of Jesus, featuring an all-star cast including Oscar Isaac, Forrest Whitaker, and more. King of Kings brings the story of Jesus to the big screen for a whole new generation. Become a premium member in the Angel Studios Guild, get 2 free tickets to see King of Kings, and join the Angel Guild as a premium member at angel.com/Kirk. Check out King of Kings in theaters this Easter. Right now, there is a conclave happening in Rome. Now, I am not Catholic, but I have great reverence for the Catholic Church and for Catholics. And some of our audience is Catholic, some of our audience is not Catholic. But this should matter to everybody. This is arguably the most high-profile religious official on the planet. It involves geopolitics. It involves issues of morality. And helping us to unpack that is John Yep, who runs Catholics for Catholics. He is live from Rome. John, great to see you. Thank you for taking the time. First, educate our audience on what is a conclave, who is voting, and what can we expect?
It's great to finally be on the Charlie Kirk Show, and what a way to do it. Right here from Rome with an incredible view of St. Peter's Basilica behind me. You mentioned conclave, Latin word for key. So what just happened about 2 hours ago, 136 men journeyed over to the Sistine Chapel designed by Michelangelo. They locked themselves in. All their electronics were taken from them. And what are they doing? They don't come out. Those cardinals don't come out until they, together with it, choose the man that will lead 2 billion Catholics around the world. So that's what a conclave is. This is a tradition that goes back almost really to the foundation of the church 2,000 years ago, and it's a special moment for Christians and non-Christians alike around the world.
And so they're going to meet. What exactly happens in these deliberations, and what is the process? And this is very rare, right? I mean, this is only the 3rd time in my lifetime that such a conclave is occurring.
It is rare. What's happening? Obviously, we know that Pope Francis died the day after Easter, right after J.D. Vance and him had that special moment together that way. And then these past 2 weeks have been extremely, extremely important, Charlie, because, even if you're not Catholic, you probably understand that we've had a pontificate under Pope Francis, which has genuinely created a lot of scandal for Christians across the world. There's been a lot of just obfuscation on Catholic doctrine and biblical principles, and it's been a time these past 2 weeks for the Catholic faithful to voice their concerns, which they have in abundance, to these men and let them know we want to return to orthodoxy. That's been so essential, right? So these cardinals have spent the last 2 weeks hearing and meeting on their own. This is actually the first time that they have been gathered together in roughly 10 years. So they themselves have also had time to get to know each other. But now it's up to them. Like I said, there's no electronics. They've cut themselves off from the outside world, and it's time to listen. I will say, Charlie, if you're not Catholic, you're like, wait, great, so what is this? This is like John 21 being lived out right before your eyes. That moment when Christ told Peter, he told him 2 verbs. He told him, I want you to feed my sheep, boske from Greek, and I want you to shepherd, poimane, feed and shepherd the sheep. Christ needed Peter to do that. So what these men are going to be doing, they're going to be choosing that successor of Peter to continue to lead to and minister to the Catholic flock around the world.
So let's talk about some of the concerns. Pope Francis was not necessarily well received by all Catholics. And I'm not I just know from Catholics I know, like Taylor Marshall or Jack Posobiec. Privately and publicly, Michael Knowles, they definitely would have some objections with some of his statements. What are you looking for in the next pope? What do you think could be improved upon? And who are the front runners?
Cardinal Mueller, he's the former head of the doctrine of the faith. He had a great statement. He said, look, people, this is not about conservatives or progressives. What we want is either an Orthodox or we want a non-heterodox cardinal or a pope. In other words, we want someone that's faithful to traditions of what we believe for 2,000 years. You had Pope Francis who, he danced with traditional things like the blessing of same-sex marriages. On the geopolitical scale, he signed that horrendous deal with the, Chinese Communist Party. which really sold out the underground church over there and gave the power to the Chinese communists, that ability to name bishops, something that's never been done, Charlie, in 2,000 years. So what are we looking for? We're looking for someone who's going to be what the popes are supposed to be. There's a Latin title for them, Pontifex Maximus. That literally means greatest bridge builder. A bridge builder for what? Between God and Jesus Christ. The day we fail to mention that name over and over again is the day that we have failed as a Christian religion. Okay, so that's what we're looking for in a pope, and also just even on a geopolitical scale. You know, Charlie, you and I grew up in a time where we lived at John Paul II, Ronald Reagan. Look what they were able to do to bring down the Iron Curtain. Okay, think big. Imagine if we had a pope who was extremely supportive and understood, yes, the biblical principles of a border, right? And what he could do to help President Trump and support him and order back in our country. That's just a small, right? So that's what Christians have gathered all around the world here. The streets are literally packed, Charlie, right down here, and praying that we get the man that is best going to lead the church.
So let me ask you this, which is that popes in past have had serious involvement in geopolitical matters. Pope John Paul II, famously the Polish Pope, visited Poland in 1979, right after his election in 1978, that really sparked a national awakening. He spoke out crisply and repeatedly against Soviet communism. He was an anti-communist figure in a time where the world was in a time for choosing. John Paul II framed what could be called Marxist materialism as very dehumanizing, and became kind of a spiritual force against Soviet totalitarianism. In today's time, we are seeing the excesses of modernity. What I, as a non-Catholic, would love to see is a pope who speaks out about the increase in secularization, the downfall of Western values, the need to be able to grow closer to the divine. I think we're in a similar but different time of when we saw with John Paul II, where the enemy was Soviet communism. We now have the rise of the Chinese Communist Party. We have the West deciding to basically commit slow motion. Talk about how popes can be even more than the head of the Catholic Church, but also be a spiritual force for good internationally.
You know, when you look at a pope and make the determination, how geopolitical should he be? Should he be involved in politics? It's almost the same question which you challenge your audience all the time, Charlie. If you are truly living out your faith, that faith has got to leave the church doors and will touch concrete realities of human existence, i.e. the political realm, right, to a degree. You know, and you've rightly called out some pastors, priests, or whatever that have remained on the sidelines in the name of neutrality. But that's ridiculous, you know, because you're neither hot nor cold, I'll spew you out of my mouth. So a person, a Christian, sets out first and foremost with the desire to love the Lord and get souls to heaven. If he has that as his number one intention, he will have a geopolitical effect, right? Because it's gonna overflow. That love to help people find the truth. The truth will set you free. Will touch the realities of human existence. So this has to be done. I mean, we have a world that's on fire right now, and President Trump, he needs all Christian leaders, but specifically the leadership of the Catholic Church, which has been such a central figure in the last 2,000 years in civilization. We need that moral on the world stage the past 12 years. Hats off to President Trump for going here 2 weeks ago to be there for the funeral, to give that sign of respect for the office of the Pope. But it's time. We need that moral compass, and we need shepherds in this country, Catholic, especially Catholic. I'm speaking for myself. We need Catholic priests and bishops who are going to be bold. It is not enough to be good, because evil happens when good men do nothing. And thanks be to God, there were 58% of you Catholics across the country who partnered with Charlie Kirk and chased down Catholic ballots who did not sit back. And that is why we have a second chance in this country at saving it.
I love that. So hopefully we will get a papal announcement soon. Explain the smoke. What happens when we get an announcement? Usually there's a lot of pomp and circumstance. And for non-Catholics out there, can you explain all of the pageantry? A lot of evangelicals will look at the pageantry and they'll kind of cringe, I'll be honest. They'll say, come on, is this really what Jesus wanted? And I have a mixed opinion on it. I think that we should do great and grand things in the honor of our Lord. I think that we should, take it from the Old Testament that building beautiful temples is important. 2 minutes, John. Touch on all of that, both the pageantry and the timeline.
First of all, if you have critiques, good for you. Speak it up. We need it. We need to be challenged in our faith to be able to talk it back. Pageantry, it's not in se evil, right? Even in the inauguration, you look at all the pageantry around that. That's what makes it special. It's a special moment. We as a human culture, we need to celebrate, right? So we will see some of that. The tradition of the white smoke, that goes back to, almost to 1247 when they started sending smoke signals out, right? Because it was so important that these men not be unduly influenced by worldly powers, that they had to have a way to just kind of send out a message outside that we have a pope. So when the white smoke comes up, which I'm, probably going to be Friday or so, it should be a short conclave, we hope. About 45 minutes later, the Pope will step out and he will give a blessing, urbi et orbi, Latin for to the city and to the world. It's a blessing for all of humanity to offer his benediction, right? So you'll see that in the next few days. It's a special moment if you can, just to take it in and just realize the history of the place behind me. That is where St. Peter, the man that Jesus Christ called in the Sea of Galilee, was called, and he's buried there. And we're seeing the continuation of Peter's successors down to the present day.
John, thank you for your time. We pray that you have a safe and successful trip to Rome. I don't know where you guys are all staying. I have to ask you because, George Farmer's going there. I think, Jack Posobiec is there. Do you guys have some sort of Airbnb arrangement? I can't imagine logistically how this works. Super quick, 20 seconds.
Spent 5 years in Rome, Charlie. Here's the deal. Everything is possible in Italy with l'amicizia, with the friendship, okay? So if you know people, know the right person, it's like DC times 10, right? So we got a good place right over here, great view behind us, and it's if you can make it to Rome, I highly encourage you to do so. Thanks, Charlie, again for covering this important topic.
No, I know so many people that are in Rome. I said, where are you guys all staying? It's impossible. John, thank you so much.